Hello and welcome everybody to today's edition of Mexico News Network's Breaking News. I'm your host, Zafiro Fierro. Remember to follow us on all our social networks and to catch us every day by logging on to our website, MexicoNewsNetwork.com, for relevant stories and news. Let's start with today's show. According to a study from the Talent Service Center, recognized in 2013 by the World Council of Gifted Talented Children as a national center for gifted in Mexico, the country has 6,000 cases of gifted children, and currently the center has 300 active cases. In Mexico, there are a lot of gifted children. However, 95 out of 100 have not been discovered, and the reason is that it is often confused with conditions such as autism, attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity, or Asperger's syndrome. Andrew Almazan Anaya, Director of Research and the Department of Psychology at the SEDAT, announced that of the 300 current active cases, only 25% are female. And this is because they are better at adapting with the environment and prefer to feel accepted before noted for their skills. However, a curious fact is that usually the scores obtained from women are much higher on IQ issues. Instead, 130 or 140 values from which it is considered to be gifted. They reach up to 180 or 190 IQ. It is important to detect gifted children early, for thus have greater opportunities for development, and also they directly influence the economic development of a country. According to the theory developed by Louis Thurman, the per capita income of a population is related to the average intelligence of a country, and this intelligence depends heavily on the population of gifted people. Almazan finished commenting that it is quantified that for every 1,000 gifted children, the economic impact generated in their adulthood is equivalent to 1 million people at an economically active age. So, if we find 10,000 gifted, and if they are well channeled, they would have an impact on 10 million Mexicans. That is why it is important to properly identify gifted children and to give them the foundation they need to become the best that they can become. In other headlines, the state of Guanajuato is going to have its very own aerospace park in Puerto Interiror named Sky Plus. Construction started back in April. It will be located in the city of Silao, next to the Bajio International Airport. The governor, Miguel Marquez, during his fourth government report, announced the construction of this new cluster in the month of March with a 6 million peso investment. Turned into one of the main stages of Guanajuato's industrial boom, Puerto Interiror has received investments for $2,458 million during the past 6 years. Up until now, the automotive sector has marked its predominance in this logistic complex by representing 59% of the investments. A few years ago, it was stated attracting aeronautic investments to San Miguel de Allende. Guanajuato will focus on consolidating as a maintenance center for aircrafts and, in the long run, an airplane parts manufacturer. In an 80-hectare extension, it will be home for leading companies in airplane maintenance and helicopters, as well for the manufacture of other pieces. In the same space, a logistic platform will be established. It is expected to be the most complete and dynamic one in the country. This way, the state, which will become the #1 in automotive vehicles in 2020, will seize their potential in the aeronautic sector. This way, the state will become the #1 in automotive vehicles in 2020, will seize their potential in the aeronautics sector. Around 1,600 direct jobs will be generated, as well as 4,000 indirect ones. Also, a bonded warehouse will be prepared to facilitate the transportation of air cargo. Moving on, as everyone knows up until now, there are two candidates competing on opposing parties just waiting for the elections due in November 2016. On one hand, you have a leader who wants to give Mexicans a chance at full U.S. citizenship. And on the other hand, you have a candidate who's campaigning against it. Not only that, but he wants to have them deported and kept out of the country by building a wall measuring 3,000 kilometers long. Here's where it gets interesting. Although we've talked about the implications of this considering Mexico has no less than 57 border ports of entry where billions of dollars in merchandise go through on a daily basis, a wall per se would be borderline impossible. Or as U.S. Ambassador Roberta Jacobson would say, unfeasible, stating that the USA and Mexico share a strong relationship thanks to the North American Free Trade Agreement. So now let's get into the main point. How much would this wall actually cost? There are a lot of points to consider. First of all, finding a way to keep illegal immigrants out is not a novelty. You should know the Secure Fence Act called for the construction of an 1,100-kilometer fence back in Bush's administration in 2006. As of today, that fence is only 50 kilometers short to completion. Back then, the cost was estimated to be $2.4 billion for roughly a third on the entire border. And that's just the easiest and less costly areas of fence according to migration experts. And this is just a fence we're talking about. So what about a border wall? Well, Mark Rosenblum, Deputy Director of the U.S. Immigration Policy Program at the Migration Policy Institute, says the cost for a border wall will be as high as $16 million per 1.6 kilometers. That's $1 million for every 100 meters of wall. The total cost for the completion would range between $15 to $25 billion. Even so, Rosenblum said, that's probably an understatement due to some parts that are considered to be the most difficult to fence, like dense, arid terrain. And you know what would push the cost even higher? They would have to pay a private acquisition for land and maintenance. And that's without throwing into the mix the maintenance cost for this wall, which could be as high as $750 million per year. And who's going to pay for this maintenance? The U.S. government, of course. That's not to mention adding personnel, which then again would raise the overall cost. In addition to the spending data, they would also have to install security cameras throughout because, like Rosenblum puts it, a fence is useless without a camera to tell when someone is climbing over it. At the end, this is just an estimate, and most of it is from fences, which is reality nowadays, and according to Trump, he wants a wall. And if he really means that, the difference between the cost of a fence and the cost of a wall is a huge gap. We should all bear in mind. This was all for today. Thank you for staying with us. I'm your host, Zafiro Fierro. Remember to follow us on all of our social networks, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and to log on to our website, MexicoNewsNetwork.com, for more information on Mexico and the world. Until next time.